Okay, Father, thank you for this time to get together. It's a kind of an interesting time that we live in, with China rattling sabers and now North Korea, and it just looks like war is inevitable, world war. But we're learning in these teachings that you promise to keep us safe and away from it. So we choose to believe that reality and that truth. Then we come together and learn this topic. It's challenged for sure, challenging, but your truth be lightened on this. In Yahuwah's name I pray, amen. And with that, I'm going to turn off the cameras and we're going to roll. What's up, Mark?
Okay, so today is Sunday, February 19th of 2023. Just as a record, there was a question which we addressed last week, which I'll restate. It's concerning the paleo katana and odakai, or odachi, which is showing those samurai swords. Someone asked about that and I sent a reply, but just so you know, this is dealing with the same situation with what phonetic sounds go to what letters. So two names of samurai swords in Japanese, there might be a dozen names for all I know, but two of them are katana and odachi. And the spelling in English letters, because it's just phonetics, K-A-T-A-N-A. So the question is, well, how do you spell that? Well, it could be the letter cough. We're starting over. I'm not sure how much Kurt got before it stopped. So the phonetics of katana, if it's cough, the 11th letter, cough, tav, noon. Yes, I have it, Karen. Then that would be like a jackal, or name of a sword, devouring, kind of like that word Excalibur we talked about once before. But if you spell it with a kuf and look at kuf tet instead of kaf tav, kuf tet is like QT. Cutie, well, that's in English C-U-T-I-E, and this is the phonetics of QT, kuf tet. Well, that's like cute, so it's small, it's insignificant, like little children, cute, something cute. Kuf tet noon, katan, for the children. Okay, so in doing a use of the dictionary, slower paced, little simpler description, a children's view, hopefully, you might say. Well, what age of children? Doesn't matter. Beginners, simple, hopefully. And then the odachai or odachi, well, the ayin is the equivalent of the English letter O, even though it might be pronounced as an A or a U or a kind of a GH. So LMNOP, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Noon, there's no Samic transferring into English, ayin, pay, so the O lines up with the ayin. Okay, so Oda, look in the Klein's dictionary, it's an ornament or bejewelment, and then Chai, Chet Yod, is life, ornament of life or bejeweled. So even though it looks like a sword, it's the idea of teaching this matter as if it was a weapon. Why should learning Hebrew be a weapon? We'll get to that. Yosef, well, Yod Vav, Samic Pei, Yosef, Samic Pei. Samic Pei, Yosef, his name means goblet or door or to add or increase or threshold. Doesn't mean door, it means threshold, at the threshold of his place. And remember, because of the famine and the position Pharaoh put him in, he gathered up all the grain and people came to his threshold, to his door, to receive their allotted portion. He was playing into his name, Yosef. The word sif, Samic Yod Pei, is also sword or swordsman. So there was a, well, I'm not sure where I put it. There's a little sticker that I had made called the Smilodon or Zachachadon. Playing around with words. A Smilodon, I believe, is probably a Latin word for a saber-toothed tiger, you know, the big, long Those things were probably a foot long sometimes. They'd sink into the neck of an animal. The animal couldn't dislodge it, and it would chew its throat. So zachacha is the root of the word for Isaac, which is to smile, and the word pronounced dan, dalet ayin nun. Well, dalet ayin is knowledge. So dalet ayin nun is one who is about knowledge, which would be a scientist or the business of knowledge. But the word zachak is not just like as in yitzchak, yod zadi chet kuf. Zadi chet kuf, here with the hey suffix, is smile, but it's also sport, play, mocked or derided, and laughter loving. So it's interesting. You read the story about Ishmael and Isaac, and it says that Ishmael was sporting with Isaac. It's like, what was he doing? He was messing with his name somehow, because was he deriding him, laughing at him, turning his name somehow against him, contending, and all of a sudden that's where Sarah got an attitude and said, no way, this kid, this foreigner's kid is going to share the heir with my child. I mentioned that quote, that's in, I think, Genesis 21, I think, from last week. It's like, was that wrong? Was that bad? Well, everything's a play on words in Hebrew. So the more of these words you realize, there's something going on. So the idea that it's not just Isaac means laughter. It's a sport. It's to play, and some sports are dangerous. It seems to me that playing with words, twisting the meanings, innuendos, 2 or 3 synonyms, seems to be the sport of the kingdom. This is Yahuwah's playground. He seems to love this stuff because it's all over the place. That's Zadi or Somic Pei, Sif, if you put a noon, because the noon suffix is the one engaged in, like the word da'an, dalet ayin noon would be knowledge in use, scientist. Somic Pei noon, one who has dealing with this Yosef business, you could say, because Yod Vav would be the prefix, literally is the word for mystery, sailor, navigation, esteem, or to value something so much you hide it, you cover it, hence a mystery. Mystery ship is kind of like a safan. It's like to have an open boat is one matter, but then you put a deck or a covering on the boat, or you put something in the hold of the ship to transport. Now that makes it a Somic Pei noon. But Somic Pei also has to do with at the end of something. Like at the end of time, Yom Suf. Suf there is where we get the word soup, and Sofa, as I mentioned, Sea of Reeds, Yom Suf. It was the end of the Egyptians. It was the end of the idea that you were slaves under this empire's jurisdiction and rule, and Yahuwah brought them into, actually it was the Saudi Arabian, what now we call Saudi Arabian Peninsula, land of Midian. So this word safan can also mean at the end or late ripening fruit. Late ripening fruit. So if you have to sit there and look at human history or the time on the face of the earth where we are now, you compare the statue of Daniel 2 that Nebuchadnezzar saw, and he's wondering before he went to bed, gee, wonder what's going to happen after me? I've got such this great, incredible kingdom. And remember, he couldn't remember the dream, and he called all those wise men, Chaldeans and Magi, and to come in and tell him both the dream and what it meant. Nobody could but Daniel, and so Daniel was given a prestigious position interpreting the dream. And the dream ended with, well, some people don't know these things, so I'll go over some of the details. Head of gold, the statue he saw standing out on a plain, the head of gold, arms and chest of silver, midsection of bronze, legs of iron, feet of iron mixed with clay. And then a stone, it says, not cut with human hands, comes out of the distance off of some mountains. You have to picture because it doesn't exactly say directly. Anyway, the stone comes and hits the feet, shatters the feet, the toes of iron mixed with clay, and the entire statue comes toppling down. And then that little rock, the Eben, Aleph Bet Nun, that stone that hit the feet, itself becomes this mountain which fills the entire earth. And the winds blew away all remnant dust, memory of the statue of those metals representing the empires. And Daniel said, you, O King Nebuchadnezzar, are the head of gold, and after you another kingdom, which would be the Medes and the Persians, the silver arms. Well, think about what's with head. Intelligence, education, structure, the government. Think of all the cerebral matters. And what about arms? Well, scale of arms would be commerce, but arms is also military. So it's economics and military industry. And then the guts, what's in the guts? You could think of, well, that's like culture, sports and entertainment. That's Greece. And then legs was Rome, legs of iron. And out of Rome came both Christianity and Islam. And out of Rome was this politics and religion. The back of the US dime 10-cent piece used to have these two, what they call fascia, which were wrapped reeds with an axe sticking out, representing a type of republic law, rule of law. Rule of law came out of Rome. And then what's iron mixed with clay? Well, up until a century ago, the last century, the 1900s, it was make the world safe for democracy. That was quite a talking point agenda. Well, before that, there was monarchies on the earth. There was no democracy, the rule of the people. No, the people are supposed to be subjugated. You don't give the people a voice. That's crazy. Well, once democracy spread, then it was like, oh, hey, everybody should be an equal voice in their government. Well, that to me kind of looks like the 10 toes. Could that be the 10 toes? And you could say, well, are these different kingdoms, or are they aspects of development of one kingdom? So it was this amalgamation of Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, Rome, and then democracy. Well, if that's the case, then instead of saying, well, I remember when I was in probably high school, there was talk about, hey, 10 toes. This thing that was called the European Union was being confederated, and there wasn't quite 10, and then there became more than 10. It's like, well, what do you do with that? Because some people said, oh, those 10 toes are the confederated, what had been the Holy Roman Empire. You see, people guess. How do you interpret visions and dreams and prophecies, timing, which is all eschatology? Where is a solid factor that you can appropriate a baseline, a foundation to, that everything else is a reference of it? For King Nebuchadnezzar to be given that dream is a solid matter that was declared. He was given the dream, and the dream was interpreted through Daniel, but this was to be trusted. And we could see everything, but what's this feet? Well, the interesting thing about the word feet and leg is that in Hebrew it's the word regal, resh gimel lamed. Regal. Isaac Moseson, the author of the book Origin of Speeches, has done a great study on how Hebrew has morphed through the various languages of the world. And a typical pattern, RGL, regal, resh gimel lamed. Well, you swap the last two letters and flip them in, so it's RLG. And he says you can trace that they did this with the phonetics, the consonantal sounds of various languages. So what are the English words? It's a matter of just thinking. Regal, regal, regalia, regular, and then RLG, relegated, religious. Well, what are those things? The relegated, regal, regalia, regular, and regal also means custom, habit, and tradition. Well, so a culture, you might say, is sustained or maintained by the people walking out the year's festivals. If you start in January, you got New Year's, hey, then you've got in February, Valentine's Day, and then you've got Memorial Day and Mother's Day and Father's Day, and in America anyway, and you go around, every month has some kind of ceremony for keeps people buying things, keep people having parties and a reason to get together and have another drink, at the pub, at the Mishkan tabernacle. Well, what about Yahweh's kingdom? Do you think he has any customs? If he says, come out of Babylon to engage his kingdom, how does he sustain interest and participation in his kingdom affairs and business and culture? Well, if you don't learn Hebrew, what, you go to church on Sunday? Is that how to sustain the kingdom of heaven's culture? Well, he's given us, see, if you look at the word regal, the 3 festivals that the men were told to go to, which would, there's 7 festivals, but the 3 they were commanded to walk up to Jerusalem or go to Jerusalem is for Passover and unleavened bread, and then Shavuot, and then Sukkot. The first month, 50 days later, and then the 7th month. So the first month and the 7th month is like they're 6 months apart. That kind of balances. So there's the word ayin zay, aleph zayin resh zar, which has to do with ear, implement of equipment belt, balanced to pay attention and weigh and keep things. So somehow that's what it does. I have a commanded festival for the first month, which is in the springtime, the month of Aviv, and then 6 months later, essentially correlated to the spring and vernal equinox. The spring is the vernal, isn't it? Anyway, vernal and autumnal equinox. Anyway, the point is, this is Yahweh's culture, the culture of his kingdom. So if somebody says, oh yes, I want to be a man of Yah, I want to be God's people, I want to say, I remember in church singing songs, the lyrics of which were, I only want to love you more. I want to see you more clearly, know you more dearly. Those kind of things. It's all this poetry of, gosh, if there was a way to get a little closer. Hey, how about doing what he said? Hey, how about walking in his ways and enlivening and sustaining the culture that he invented, he designed, the culture of his kingdom, which is completely different than the kingdom, any other kingdom of this world. The kingdom of this world, as a matter of fact, why is it that when Constantine in 321 or 325 Council of Nicaea, on the internet, if you can trust it, there's actually quotes of his speech. And part of the phrasing is, we, now he being the Christian emperor of Rome, speaking of the culture of the Roman Empire, we will have nothing more to do with the detestable practices of the Jews, which included the sacred name, the sacred day, the sacred festivals, the sacred language. So Constantine himself, thinking he was doing a mighty deed in regards of revering the Savior, Mithra, the sun god. Well, on his dying breath, supposedly he changed, but he was sustaining worship of Mithra, the sun god, while he was emperor, though it was under the pretense of being Jesus the Christ. Nevertheless, the point is, did Yahweh use Constantine? I'm not saying it's the devil. Did Yahuwah himself use Constantine's decree in order to sustain something being all messed up? And what does it mean then for the stone to hit the feet of the statue? So if this can be projected sometime in the future, well, we've already seen everything play out through Rome. So the last kingdom referenced by that statue has to be these 10 toes. And if it's the days of democracy, that's now. And if it's a matter, what does Aleph Bet Nun mean? Aleph is a prefix letter, means I will. Aleph Bet is father, but it's also Ab, which is verter, which is springtime, hence vernal. which is to have this enthusiasm. Bet Nun is son, but Bet Yod Nun is to understand. Bet Nun Hey is to build. Bet is the embodiment of, Aleph is the intention, Nun is the engaged in action. So you could say, when Yeshua said, I only do what I see my Father doing, I only say what I hear my Father saying. And there's a voice came out of heaven when he was baptized, mikvad in the Jordan River. This is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him. He was doing the chafatz, the het pezadi of his father, is Ab. So on the chart, that this is just simply called the chart with the vertical stripes. I reference that. Down at the very bottom of this, down here at the very bottom, there's a couple lines, and I was talking to, this chart's available at Erichtology Prints, Prints at gmail.com. You go to that website or email site, and Pete and Diana will send this out to you. It says something down here at the very bottom, and I don't think anybody's looked at this, and I was explaining it the other day. It says, Aleph, Daniel 2 stone, Aleph Bet Nun, Aleph. I will impart to Bet the plan in which is the hidden treasure, which is Nun, vitality of life. And then it says, understanding of the Aleph Bet is the voice of Yahweh. Kufav, which is the word for hope. Zadivav is the word command. What is it that we hope in? We hope that what Yahweh said is what's going to happen. So if somebody says, I just hope in eternal life, I hope my sins are forgiven. Well, that's kavah, or if you put a tav in front, that's tikva. So what is the blessed hope, the great hope? Ha-tikva. That's actually the name of the Israeli national anthem. Ha-tikva. Well, their hope was to be restored as a nation, which happened, 1948, after the World War II. But was that a matter of Elohim's hand? Let's say it was, but there was a book written by Chaim Potok called the, all of a sudden it skipped my mind. Anyway, The Chosen. And in there, these two rabbis are discussing, well, we got the land back. This is the grace of Elohim to make this happen. And the other rabbi saying, yeah, but the people running the government and the culture that is now in place has nothing to do with the Torah, the scripture. The promise was that Yahweh is going to restore his people, that they'll be his people, they'll walk in righteousness, they'll walk in his ways. But yet that's not the people of the restored Israel. It's a cultural, political, economic, military power, but it's not Torah. So that book was written to argue the discrepancy. And we think, oh, look at that, Israel came back, and Rabbi Jonathan Kahn wrote a book recently, last year or two, showing a whole bunch of instances that were virtually miraculous, people's names and timing and dates, and who blew the shofar when they captured the city of Jerusalem and this and that. And it's like, but does it line up with what Yahuwah promised by his voice? We can have a hope in something, a kuf vav. But if it's not in what Yahweh said he was going to do, zadivav, then our hope is just imagination. Chet kuf, chok, plus mishvat. What do I mean by that? Chet kuf is a commandment. And mishvat is balanced scales. There's a parashah reading. Parashah, just for so you know, the word parse or parsnip. Parse is to cut thing up. To parse words is to cut words apart. So parashah, like the word Persian. When Daniel read the writing on the wall, mini tikul u farsin, the word farce or parse, where you get the Farsi language, literally means to cut things up. Like the etymological reverse engineering of the spelling of words is parsing. Abba's construction project. Tav Kaf Vav Nun, Tav Kaf Lamed, So you read that takun, takal takun. So Tav Kaf Lamed in the dictionary, sky blue, end, purpose, aim, and to be complete or fulfilled. The purpose fulfilled, the end completed. What is going on with life on Earth? Why are we still scattered across the face of the Earth in dispersion if this is the end of the 2,730-year curse? What's supposed to change? What are we waiting on? It's a dozen years now. 2023, pushing 13 years after 2010. Is this all for nothing? It's like John the Baptist is sitting in prison and he has his pals go to see Yeshua and say, we declared you to be the Messiah, but are you the one, or should we expect another? It's kind of like he's poking him in the chest, poking Yeshua in the chest, John the Baptist, to his cousin and saying, hey, get on the stick, man. Do something, would you? And Yeshua said, didn't even answer his question. He said, look around. Blind see, the deaf hear, the lame walk. Dead raised with Lazarus. Of course, I don't know that John saw that, but what's the evidence? What are we supposed to be looking for? Well, the word tav, kaf, vav, nun, takon, kaf, nun is the word for yes, can. Yes, I can. Yes, it's the affirmative. So it also means disposition, character, and quality. Tav, kaf, vav, nun. Plan, design, measure, weigh, examine, programming pertaining to contents, regulated, arranged, fixed, tav, kaf, nun. You drop the vav out and you look in the dictionary, you realize the stars are tav, kaf, vav, nun. They're fixed and regulated, but what do they mean? They're a bunch of dots. Where's the base by which you can reference anything solid? Somebody has a dream, but okay, if the dream comes true, it is of Yahweh. We talked about that last week, but if they lead you to Elohim Achrim, it's a test. How do you know? Elohim Achrim. So this concept of reading the Aleph Bet, to believe, to even regard as a possibility that the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet were composed, invented, arranged, given place and given essence, thematic substance. Each one of the letters, what does it mean? What does it say? What's it referring to? And why is it in that chronological order? This is not something that most people, or maybe anybody, has a regard of, other than this particular study. Hence the word Erichtology. Ayin Resh Kaf is like Tav Kaf Nun in that it's to say, in this disclosure from Elohim to human consciousness, this disclosure of the 22 letters, it is planned, designed, can be measured, weighed, examined as a program. The contents of the alphabet are regulated, arranged, and fixed to declare for our regard of hope, and then acting accordingly. Tav Kaf Lamed. So takal takun is literally to be able to regard the alphabet as the sun embodies then the chafatz of Ab. Well, what's chafatz? Het Pei Zadi. We talked about that the other day. Het is a fence, and then so you have Pei Zadi. Well, Pei Zadi is open mouth or explosion or detonation. It's a little bit more. Het is a fence, a container. Het Tav Mem is seal up the words, Daniel, in Daniel 12. So Pei Zadi also means to be free from damage, open mouth, and it's compensation for injury. Something is released. Compensation for injury. Well, who got injured? Israel's been injured. Israel was thrown into the dispersion to be hammered and pounded by their enemies for 2,730 years, after another 300 years of being beaten by bad kings and priests of their own people. When do we get compensation for that injury? That's the word chafatz. something is enclosed or being sustained or held in the het. But then you can look at het pei zadi-ing. So the zadi is this flourish or this explosion, this blossoming of het pei. Het pei he means covered, bonnet, chuppah, bridal chamber, and secretly het pei aleph. So the idea of sitting here looking at the spelling of words and saying het pei zadi, oh, it's desire, wish, will, voluntary. It's like the chafatza, hepzibah, my desire, my wish, my for Yahweh to look at Israel and say, oh, my everything I crave, I'm banking on Israel being my people and doing what I desire, so then they can be the embodiment, the flourishing, they can be the zadi, they can be the het, whereby the opening pay zadis and flourishes. They can be the protected people that blossom if they do what I care about, the het pei zadi. So there's two ways to read into the word. One is if we regard his het pei zadi, we become his het pei zadi. Kind of like ani ladodi vedodi li. Het pei is the tooth of a key, a little knob that turns the tumblers inside the lock. So if pei zadi is to split words apart, an open mouth and free from damage, free from being locked and closed, like in Daniel 12, then the secret het pei zadi, the secret desire, unlocks words. Het zadi is the word for arrow. My arrow, het zadi, means to bisect, divide, or partition. Pei zadi he, then, is to, when Yeshua went up into the mountain, Matthew 5, he sat down, it says he opened his mouth, and he taught them, saying, and then there's the Beatitudes. He opened his mouth, that's pei zadi. So the fact that the scripture says he opened his mouth, suddenly, if you know these words, hey, boom, we reference this word, het pei zadi. And he was declaring stuff of the kingdom. So there's these little code words which we can put into this particular study. It says down here, the next line says, heifer, no bull. Well, the word het pei resh, it'd be chafar. Het pei resh is the word for seek. If you look in the dictionary, het pei shin is the next word, alphabetical order, to change the third letter, which also means to search or to set at liberty. Well, to set something at liberty is a synonym with het pei zadi. This is het pei shin, het pei resh. You realize that when words just change the next letter, the next letter, the next letter, you can, if you know what the letters mean, I'm saying this for one of the uses of the dictionary, you understand the first two letters and you see what effect a third one has, the het pei, tooth of a key, blossoming to open up the words, the mouth, freed from damage, explaining the hidden mysteries, and then what is the resh and what is the sheen, and you can just put your mind to contemplating. And that's the great thing about Klein's dictionary, to see the way one follows the next and the next. And it's like, oh, you start to see how the patterns work. The word het pei resh means seek, but it means to dig in and entrench, to search really diligently, to excavate, dig down, dig like what an archaeologist would do. And it's the word for pioneer. Well, I have here no bull, because the word heifer in English, spelled with an H, might have been spelled with a hey, but the word hey pei resh, the word pei resh is bull. To put a fence, a het, around the bull, keeping the bull out of the herd of cows, is heifer. That means no bull. It's a play on words. I'm just trying to show you that there's these little plays of word. And then it goes on to say, Shema Israel, Shin mem tav yod kaf, kaf het vav tav mem. I left this untranslated so that once people got through this whole chart, it would give them a little project, a little homework assignment. Hey, try to figure this out. Well, I'll tell you what it is. I don't know if anybody ever looks at this. I've never got any feedback from anybody. Shema Israel. Hey, first two words of the Shema. Listen up, Israel. And then here's this phrase is it from Malachi 3:10? No, it's no. Anyway, I'll find it and tell you where it is. But he's basically saying, Israel, I have placed you as a signet. That's the word Shin Mem Tav Yod Kaf. A signet ring. The Shin Mem Tav can also mean excommunicate or ban, which is to say, you're out of here. You're not like everybody else. You're kadosh. You're the word het resh mem harem is also to be singled out. So the word kaf het is strong, and where we get the word cocky, a vigorous lizard like a rooster, to be powerful. But het vav tav mem. See the word het tav mem. Daniel was told to hide the words and seal the book, to put a seal on something and close it up where it can't be opened up, like putting something in the pen or the fence where it can't break out, is het tav mem. So here, het vav tav mem, literally the dictionary says seal, signet ring, signatory, authorized agent of voice or approval, kind of like a notary, subscriber, or somebody signed up. Somebody who's signed up to be the special dignitary that people go to find out about something in particular, like an ambassador, the notary, the authorized agent. So then what are the things about signing up? Well, Aleph Vav Tav is the word for sign, oat. Nun Samik is sign. Dalet Gimel Lamed, the gal, sign, banner, flag, conspicuous. Also the word cheater, deceive, deny, and argue. It's like to be the, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, to make yourself offensive, to force the conflict. Also, there's the word Sagan, Samik Gimel Nun, which means viceroy, deputy, sign, ensign, banners, style, form, way, and formulated. Style, form, way, and formulated. In other words, if you're going to represent the kingdom of heaven, you've got to represent his culture. So it's not Christmas, Easter, Halloween, and Sunday. It's Shabbat and the Moedim. As Yahweh's viceroy, people who are making an issue. And so for the stone to hit the feet is the Aleph Bet Nun. I'm going to embody, as a good son, the will of my father, nooning, what his preference, his chafetz is. Don't expect some other culture, some other religion, some other gods or worshipers of some other deity to be the example on the face of the earth. Yahweh's Avot chose Israel, the sons of Jacob, to do this task. The word Sagal, Samik Gimel Lamed. So Sagan was the word for viceroy sign, but the very word before that, Sagal, is the word violet. It means to single out, like the word Sagula is treasure. It means adapted, conformed, fitted. It's also remedy, virtue, quality, choice, best in particular. Well, remember, choice, best, that was also the word ayin dalet, as in moed im, and you will be my witnesses, Eddie. Choice, best, treasure, segula. But it also means adapted, conformed, fitted to the culture, to his desire, and also remedy. Well, remember the word shafa, shin pei hey, lip, language, tongue, but it's also to be cured of lunacy, restore to health. And the word aleph tav nun, tonic, perpetual, ever-flowing. But aleph, I will, tav, aleph tav nun, but tav nun is where you get the word tana, which is the word for teach, or the jackal. This is the remedy with teeth, the tonic of ever-flowing that's going to make something happen. once you see the meanings of the letters and you learn, you got some memory going of the two-letter, you start putting them all together, and it's like this Rubik's cube, only it's you can see through it, and it's like, as I describe it, it's hyperdimensional. The whole thing comes together. Bet Het Resh, he says, you are my chosen and selected, choice young warriors. Bacharti. Bacardi, how do you remember that? Well, it's like the rum, Bacardi. Well, I don't know if you like Bacardi rum or not, but the word sounds like Bacardi is literally the word that means I have selected, I have chosen. And we're going to read some stuff in Isaiah and Deuteronomy that bring these words as a matter to bear. There's another word here, sagur, Samik Gimel Vav Resh, kind of like the word cigar. You know, it's a fine pure gold, Samik Gimel Resh, cigar. The little one, cigarette, enclosure and encampment. Well, that's a het. The word bet means house. We talked about this before, but the word het doesn't mean fence, but cigar means fence. Exclusion, closed, locked, and shackled, occlusion, like what happens on a rainy and cold day, just stay inside. We'll get to the significance of that word in a moment. In other words, Israel is Yahweh's cigar. Cigar. George Burns used to be known for having a cigar. Certain other people, I saw a picture of Jordan playing golf with a cigar. Why the cigar? It's not just, yeah, he likes to smoke. It's a look. It's a thing. It's like, hey, that's his thing, his ayin noon hey, his occupation. Yeah, I'm the guy with this cigar. Why? If Yahuwah has a cigar out of his mouth, you know, the guy with the white hair and the fiery eyes and a cigar, that's Israel. His Israel. Malachi 3:10, bring Aleph Tav all the tithe toward house, the storehouse, and exist tet resh pay in my house. Now, one of the things I was going to talk about here today is running through a number of verses, such as why we're doing this. And I came across that verse. I'm going to show you something real interesting in just a moment. Let me finish this there first. Sorry to jump around. But the idea of that I have placed you as my signet ring, like the cigar, like the signet ring, like the brand, the authorized viceroy. Who? Israel. Israel conformed and fitted. Then there's this phrase at the bottom. Al kavod shemo gadol Yahweh zavot elhi lakadosh lo halalo be'ayini goyim. That's the last line down here. What is that supposed to mean? Well, if you look at Ezekiel 36, timing, when is things supposed to happen? Yahuwah said, Israel, you guys messed up everything. You went into idolatry. You completely perverted my name, my reputation, my customs, my instructions, my Torah, my everything. You completely ruined, destroyed, and as a manifest of what you did to my name, he called in the enemies of Israel, and they ruined, destroyed, obliterated, profaned, violated, tore apart, erased, even to the point to the land couldn't bear foliage anymore. It's a picture of what they did to him, he showed them by having the enemies do to Israel. And then in Ezekiel, that's if you look all through the first part up to Ezekiel 36, halfway through, he's talking about doing that because they violated Het Lamed Lamed, his name, his Shem, his identity, what he was about, his Moedim, his Sabbath day, everything about truth and kindness and righteousness and justice was vilified, profaned, made other, made Elohim Achrim. And Israel had no care, didn't want, despised, loathed, hated his stuff. And he said that he would make, then, Ezekiel 36:23, I will make my Shem HaKadol Kadosh. What does it mean for him to make his name Kadosh? Well, the word Kadosh is betrothed, it's set apart, it's sacred, it's other than anything else, it's completely pure. Well, what is his Shem Kadosh? Well, it's Yahweh. That's why nobody can speak the name. The pronunciation of those 4 letters is so Kadosh, so sacred, nobody's allowed to say it. And if you do say it, from what I understand, the Jews, there's a rabbinical law that says they can kill you. It's kind of like if you say that Muhammad had a funny nose, that the Islamic guys could kill you. You don't talk smack about their sacred prophet. You don't talk smack about Yahweh without paying the penalty for it. Is that making his Shem Kadosh? Or is it to make clear and real the truth of who he really is, what his covenant is all about, and who his people really is? And what the world should expect in terms of eschatology. What did he say? What did he mean? What's going on? How do we get back on track? And to realize he not only called in the enemies of Israel, which we're going to read through a few verses to see this, but he's sustaining everything being bungled, upside down, confused, turned about on purpose until what? Ezekiel 36:23. Until I am made kadosh through you in the eyes of the goyim. Well, the word I is ayin, which is similar to ear, azar, which is, that word ayin is to weigh carefully, balance exactly, measure precisely, consider deliberately. In other words, it was Israel's job to say who Yahuwah is. His name, how do you pronounce the 4 letters? That's almost, well, big deal, but it's his character, the character of his kingdom, his nature. And there's something about the 7 Moedim, we've talked about this before. If you look at the 7 Moedim, the 7 festivals, and say, what if you could describe a consciousness by these things? What is it saying? It's not just 7 holidays. There's something more to it. Look at the reference of the letters that line up. Het Tet Yod with Pesach, Kaf Lamed with unleavened bread, Mem Nun with Shavuot, Samik with Yom Teruah, Ayin with Yom Kippur, Pei with Sukkot, Zadi with Shemini Atzeret. There's the Mishkan pattern. Why those letters to those moeds? And if you could string them together and read them, what message is it communicating? And if Yeshua gets crucified and thrown into the tomb, Het, and he resurrects at Zadi, then what did he accomplish while in the tomb lining up with that? See, this is all looking at patterns and trying to determine. But see, if this is Yahuwah's word and this is what he said, then if you don't look at Hebrew and you don't look at the Moedim and you don't regard Shabbat, the 7th day, that's Zion, that's him being crucified. The Zadi, that's the 7th place lining up in the Mishkan pattern, like the Sabbath day, that's the resurrection. So the Sabbath day is correlated to 2 letters which are weapons, the Zion and the Zadi. Did Yahuwah give his people a weapon? He gave them the Sabbath day, the Zion and the Zadi, according to the pattern. And if you throw away the Sabbath day, you got no weapon of warfare. Imagine that, unless you just pray, God help me. Really? That's all you got? Well, when your enemies kill you, you get to go to heaven if you believe in Jesus. Isn't that what is being taught? You see, all this stuff is piled together. What he said in Ezekiel 36:23, which is referenced right down here, is that when you, Israel, not just believe, not just do what I say, not just talk amongst yourselves, but when you put on display my Shem Hagadol, Hakadosh, the great name, sacred and true, then it's almost like, here, you make the shoes that are fit to my feet, and I will step in and go marching across the earth and destroy your enemies that I had put in place to harass you until you would do such a thing. Well, that's why we're doing this. That's why we're trying to restore his ways. That's why this chart was made, why that sentence is at the bottom line of the chart, is to say, we're doing it. We're doing it. at the very last line of the Aleph-Bet song is Yahweh commands the blessing, Chaim ed ha'olam. Now that's a phrase from Psalms 133:3. So I figured I'd address that real quick. There's only 3 verses in Psalms 133. So just real quick, sing the Mem Ayin Lamed, hey, Mem Ayin Lamed Vav Tav. Well, Ayin Lamed is ascent or to rise up. Mem is the place, hey is the, Vav Tav is plural. So it's Song of Ascents. Ayin Lamed Hey, or the Mem Ayin Lamed Hey, distinguished, prominent, elevated. It's the concept of the upper room because Mem is the place. So if the disciples were meeting at the upper room, why? Because there's something about believing that he said he was going to give his people surpassing eminence, priority of all people on the face of the earth. Just going to the upper room is a metaphor of that. Ladod, unto the beloved, behold, Hine, Hey Nun Hey. Now there's a song, and I'm mentioning this because this is Psalms 133, verse 1. Hine ma tov, u ma naim, shevet akim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, hine ma tov. You know that song? Shevet akim gam yachad. Anyway, behold how good, tov, tet vav bet. But tet is something that turns, and bet is something to manifest, something that turns and made manifest, put into a noun. Why is that the word good, meaning welfare and success? Imad, memhe means how or what or when or while or that which. Naim, we talked about that word as in the word Naomi, means pleasant and sweet and delightful. Dwell, shevet, well, that's also Shabbat, Shin Bet Tav. Achim, Ach, his brother, Het Yod, his life. The ones that you live, your brothers that you live together. Gam, well, Gimel Mem, Gam is the first 2 letters of the word Gamal, which is camel, which is to go back and forth. If you looked at the dictionary, one of the following words is Hey Gimel Mem Vav Non, which is the word for Hagamon or hegemony, which is leader, general, cardinal, to perceive keenly, or a sage. Gom, what's more, or also to heap up, and it's like how Tov and Naim, for the brethren, the 12 tribes, when they finally pull it together and act like Yahweh's people, act with the dignity, the resh status, the objective of, and then the word yechad, which is yod het dalet, very similar to aleph het dalet, which means unity. But if you look at gimel mem, gam, gam, it means without horns, or to stutter, something truncated, well, hyphenated. In other words, get together without your horns, quit fighting with each other. Are we doing that? When it says, how is this poetry? How good, and 5 minutes, how good and how pleasant if we would just do this. The word good is not just an adjective of wouldn't it be lovely, but if Yahweh's saying, you turn this around by behaving without horns with each other, getting along, hyphenated together, just be pleasant, just be kind. It's difficult for some of us to do. It's difficult for me to do sometimes. The next word, verse 2, kaf shin mem nun, like oil, hatov, the good, al harash, upon the head, yirad, yod resh dalet, flowing down, al hazakon, upon the beard, zakan Aaron, the beard of Aaron, shin yod resh dalet, sharid, al pei, mem dalet vav tav yod vav, ma dotio. It sounds like poetry. How wonderful, how good, like oil running down from the head that was poured on Aaron as he is anointed to be high priest. If you pick this apart, like the oil, the goodness. Now that's setting it up to talk about the thing at the very end of the sentence, which was alpay. Mem dalet is measure or garment, something extended. Vav tav yod. Well, tav yod is I have. I have measured my mouth like my mouth that I measured. In other words, what did Yahuwah say? And when we go back and determine that what he said was what he meant, and he's going to do what he said, and that's what we kuf vav have hope in because he zadi vaved it, then the goodness will flow down like pouring the oil on Aaron. The word aharon means rejoicing and gladdening. The word sharid doesn't just mean pouring down. It means remnant, saved alive, survivor, rescue, escape, descended, lowered down, and removed. The word zakon is not just beard, but hazak, hey zayin kuf with the noon as a suffix instead of hey as the prefix, means damage, injury, or loss. And the word zakon is old man, scholar, or elder. Zak, zayin kuf hey, if noon was the suffix, means attachment, need, relationship. Purified, refined, needy, dependent. In other words, what is it that we need? If we just realized what Yahweh said and trusted that what he said was true and got along together without fighting each other, then he would restore compensation for the damage, injury, and loss, like he said. Okay, so then why do we need a new gospel? Why do we need a new testimony if the testimony he said was conditional for us listening, believing, and cooperating in our behavior with each other and making his great Shem Hagadol Kadosh in the estimation, the ayin, the weighing and measuring of the nations? It's not just about saying, oh, believe in Jesus so you can go to heaven. It's do what he said so that his prestige and renown is appreciated by everybody else in the world because he's going to make Israel distinctively set apart, elevated, preeminent above all other people groups, ideologies, customs, and religions. Yahuwah, Zavot, Elhi, Israel. Who is that? And if the church was that people, why do they have no regard of his name, his language, his ways, his moedim, his customs, his instructions? And they hate the concept of the Torah. Why? Why? Take a break.